Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Spear. I'm the Assistant Director and Senior Instructional Designer in AT Still University's Teaching and Learning Center, or TLC. I'm excited to welcome everyone here in the Zoom room and everyone watching online to today's TLC Tech Time. In this session, I'll give a brief recap of this month's Canvas in 5 and provide a demonstration. That's the part that'll be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel, which we call the TLC Learning Channel. And then we'll stop the recording and provide a safe space in the Zoom room for Q&A and discussion. So because of this structure, I'm going to ask that folks joining us live today hang on to your questions until we stop that recording. And before we dive in, I just want to offer two brief reminders. The first is that previous Canvas in 5 and TLC Tech Time recordings are available on our TLC Learning Channel. And additionally, that engaging with our TLC Tech Time, either by attending live or by watching the recording and reporting your engagement, is eligible for half a credit toward Level 2 Technology of our Level Up certificate program. So this month's Canvas in 5 and TLC Tech Time are really both focused on the idea of creating assignments in Canvas. We talked about different ways you can create an assignment in the Canvas in 5, and it's not a requirement to have watched that before engaging with this TLC Tech Time, but we will provide it in the chat now and put it in the YouTube description for those who want to review the Canvas in 5 video. In today's TLC Tech Time, I want to go through the full set of options that we have when we create an assignment in Canvas. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. All right, so we're in a Canvas course now, and I'm on the assignments page. Let me move my little video panel here for just a second. All right, so I'm going to get started by clicking plus assignment here at the top. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is give this assignment a descriptive name, something that's going to let us know what the assignment is and let our students know too. So for this demonstration, I'll do a final presentation assignment. The next thing that we can do is give some really nice descriptive instructions for the assignment, and I'll show you some ways that you can add in multimedia for this. So I'm going to grab a set of instructions that I wrote on a different Word doc, so I'm going to grab that and paste that in. And here we can talk about some different formatting options. So the first thing I want to do here is maybe bold this text and then start getting into some heading structures. So I'm going to give this getting started my heading 2. And what I hope you can appreciate is at the bottom of this rich text editor, we have an accessibility checker, It's this little person icon in a circle, and we're getting a flag here. So that's telling us there's something we want to pay attention to from an accessibility perspective. So I'm going to click on that, and it's telling us that this list that we had in our instructions wasn't formatted properly as a list. So in this case, we probably typed 1 period and then started the set of instructions and didn't format that properly as a list. So in a lot of cases, you can actually mitigate this right by using this panel. So if I were to click Format as List, you can see that it made some updates in the rich text editor. And in this case, it didn't do it 100% right. So we can go in and edit that ourselves, but it does often mitigate that for you right away. So I'm going to uncheck that. And here we're just going to go ahead and remove that text, and I'm going to go to these 3 dots, and under the bullet point option, I'm going to find the numbered list. So now we can go ahead and get this formatted properly. And as we do that, you'll see that that little accessibility checker alert went away. So that's gone, and we've resolved this and formatted the list properly. The next thing I want to point out is that we can add links and other multimedia directly into our instructions here. So I've created a rubric in a Google Doc, so I can grab that from my other screen, and I'm going to go up to this link icon in the menu kind of ribbon here, and I'm going to click external link and add that in. So it flashed yellow, it told us that it was added, and now we can see that that text is hyperlinked to our Google Doc where that rubric can be found. I also have a Google Slides link, so I'm going to grab that and do the same thing. And now I have PowerPoint templates that I want to add in. So I have in my files a PowerPoint file that I want to upload. So here I'm going to highlight that text, and I'm going to come up to this document icon, and I'm going to just choose to select or upload a document. I'm going to click and drag that and hit submit. And again, we got that flash, so now that's been added and students can download that to work on for this assignment. And then similarly, I have an example presentation that I want to link. So there's other ways I can, or multiple ways that I can link media into this assignment. I could link Echo 360 content or link YouTube videos, but I'm going to show you how you can upload a video from your computer. So I'm going to go up to this media icon. It kind of looks like a YouTube play button and a music note. And I'm going to click and drag an MP4 file that I have. And this is going to take a little longer to process, but we got that yellow flash, so it did something. So here, I'm going to click and drag this, and it embedded that video right for us in the instructions. So if you want the video embedded, this is great. It's done what we wanted, but we also can go up to video options here. We can change that name. Sorry, sometimes that little button likes to hang out. And instead of embed video, I'm going to choose display text link. So now this would be linked like our other URLs in our instructions, and students could open that in a new tab. And then at the bottom, I'm going to also choose to upload a caption file for accessibility. And I'm going to grab this VTT file and go ahead and link that. And then all I have to do is remove that placeholder text. So now our instructions are good to go. They're descriptive and they let students know what to expect and what they need to do. So then moving down the list here, we can choose how many points we want our assignment to be worth. This is a high stakes assessment. I'm going to leave it as 100, but we could enter any number of points here that we need. We also can choose where this assignment is grouped. So we'll talk more about groups in upcoming TLC Tech Times and Canvas in 5 videos. But for now, please just know that you can choose from groups you already have, or we can create a new group if we need to. So if I click Create Group, maybe I call this Final Assessments, and I could create this group right now that would add the assignment to the group and add the group to my assignments page in my from my Canvas navigation menu. We also can choose how we want this assignment to display the grade as. So this is defaulting right now to points, but we do have options to display the grade as a percentage, a letter grade, GPA scale. We can mark it as complete or incomplete. And we can also choose for this assignment to not be graded. What I want to point out is that depending on how you select this display grade as feature, you'll see different options in SpeedGrader when you go to grade the assignment. But for now, we also have options at this stage to still indicate that the assignment can be graded with points, but we can choose to not count this assignment toward the final grade. So maybe this is something that's an optional assignment or practice, and I don't want that to count toward the grade. I can check that box there. For demonstration purposes today, this is the final presentation. So I definitely want to make sure that that's counting toward the final grade, but I did want you to know about that option. Moving into submission type, we have different formats for submissions or lack thereof that we can enable in our Canvas assignment. So if you have students doing something in class, say a discussion or a role-playing scenario or a simulation, or they're taking an exam or a quiz on paper, you can select the no submission or on paper options so that you still have an assignment in Canvas and in your gradebook on Canvas for that deliverable, that activity, but there wouldn't be anything for students to submit because they did it in class or on paper. We also have options to use multiple external tools. So Lucid is a third-party tool for chart making and diagramming, so we have an option to do that here, or we can choose external tool. And if you're doing this, the first thing we would come to is this Find button. We want to click that and then find our external tool like Echo 360, Perusal, Harmonize, whatever it is, we want to find it from this list. So I'm going to go down to Echo 360 just as an example. So I'd select it from this menu, and then I'd also have to hit this blue Select button. And that's going to load in this URL that we don't want to touch. We want to leave it just as is. And I want to point out that depending on the external tool, sometimes you would get a dialog box at this point to do more, to link the assignment in that external tool to this Canvas assignment, or sometimes that dialog box appears after you've saved the assignment. So in this case, after I would save the assignment, that's when we would select our Echo 360 content. So we wouldn't see it here, and that does confuse people sometimes. We also have an option for students to submit work online. And so here, there's multiple online options like text entry, website URL, media recordings, student annotations of files that we upload, or files that students are uploading. And because of how I wrote the assignments, the assignment description up here, I'm going to leave the website URL and file upload options toggled because I want students to be able to submit a Google Slides link or upload a PowerPoint file. So those are appropriate for the instructions that I set. You also have the option to either not restrict file types or offer a restriction. And so in this case, we might restrict, like you saw before, we might restrict this to a PowerPoint file just to make sure that students are uploading the deliverable in the format that we want, but that's not required. We could always untoggle that. The next set of options allows us to control how many times students can submit work for this assignment. So there's an unlimited option, which is great if this is something for practice that we want students to be able to attempt again and again, or we can set a limited number of attempts. And we could have this be 1, 2, 3. We can either type the number or use these up and down arrows to change the number of attempts. So because this is a final presentation that we're building out today, I'm going to leave this as 1 attempt allowed. You also have options to enable plagiarism review with the third-party tool Turnitin. So up to you whether you want to enable that or not, but it is an option for you in Canvas. So in a previous TLC Tech Time, we've talked a lot about groups, and we also talked about group assignments. So we'll link to more information about that if you'd like to learn more. But for today's TLC Tech Time, I'll talk about how you can toggle this on if this is a group assignment. And then you can either allow the grade to be applied to the group holistically, so everyone in the group would get the same score, or you can choose to assign grades to each student individually. So again, you have choices here for if this is a group assignment at all, and if it is, how you want those grades distributed. Another option that you have is peer reviews. So if we toggle this on, that would require peer reviews for this assignment. And you can either manually assign the peer reviews, so you determine who is reviewing whom, or we can have the software automatically assign peer reviews. So we could say, for example, we want each user to get 2 reviews, and we can decide when those reviews should be assigned. If we leave this field blank, then the automatic assignment will be done on the due date of the assignment we're building, or you can use the calendar option here to select an earlier or later date and time for those peer reviews. Another option you have in the peer review list here of options is whether the assignments or the reviews, should appear anonymously. So if we toggle that on, that's going to act a bit like a blinded review process for a manuscript. So instead of seeing someone's name kind of like in SpeedGrader, they wouldn't see who submitted the work. And so that allows a little bit less bias in the peer review process and that anonymity. If you use this option, it's really important to let students know not to include any identifying information in their actual submission. So if they were to put their name or anything identifying in the PowerPoint file that they upload or the document that they upload, the reviewer would see that. So it's important for them to not put any identifying information if you want the reviews to be anonymous. We also have an option here to do what's called moderated grading. That allows multiple graders to review students' work. So this is sometimes used for pretty high stakes assessments where you want to make sure that multiple graders are looking at student work. So here we would toggle that on and we would indicate how many graders would grade each student's work. So we could enter in a number like 2, 3, number of graders. Here I only have 1 grader in my test course, but you could enter as many graders as you need. And you can choose whether those graders can view each other's comments or not. So this is able to be checked or unchecked. You also need to determine which grader will decide the final grade. So sometimes that's the course director or another instructor in the course who's going to review the grades that each instructor has given and make that final determination. So when you're setting up this assignment, you also can choose whether or not that final grader can view the names of the other graders or not, sort of a little bit of that like anonymous grading aspect. Like we saw with the peer reviews, we can also enable anonymous grading for ourselves, the instructors, for the grading process. So if we check this box, again, we would want to communicate to students that they shouldn't include any identifying information in the file or materials that they're uploading. But what that would do is essentially not show student names in SpeedGrader until the grades have been posted or until this setting is changed. So that can help reduce bias in the grading process as well. So then lastly, I want to talk about this assign access component at the very bottom of the page. Here, this is going to default to assigning the activity to everyone in the class, but you can actually toggle whether this should be assigned to particular lab sections or sections in your course or particular students. So this is really great as an option for you doing remediation assignments or makeup assignments or something like that. What's really great about this and really powerful about this is you can set different assignments for different groups. So let's say, for example, I have lab section 1 that meets on Tuesday and lab section 2 that meets on Thursday. I can set different due dates within the same assignment for these two lab sections. So I could set section 1 having their assignment due on Tuesday, and then I can click this plus assign to, and now I can assign lab section 2 to have their assignment due on Thursday. So that's a really nice way that you can differentiate the due dates and have work done delivered at the times that you need based on your course structure. Before we conclude, I also want to mention, we'll also set that back to everyone. So before we conclude, I also want to mention these available from and available until dates. I think there's some misconceptions about these because they work very differently than a due date. So the due date is going to set when students need to have work done by, and it'll mark anything after that as late. But the available from and available until dates set when students can access the assignment page itself and then also whether they can submit work. So the available from date will not allow students to look at that assignment until that date. So that's really helpful for things like making sure students are not working ahead. But if you want students to have access, but just not be able to submit late, we don't want to use that. So we want to make sure we're using it for its intended purpose. And similarly for the until date, that would restrict students from having access after a certain date. So that might be useful. Let's say you have a practice assignment that you want students to submit, but you don't want them looking at that for an open notes assignment or an open notes test. Maybe you use that until date, but again, it does work very differently from a due date, so keep that in mind. Lastly, before we conclude, I just want to point out this button at the very bottom. We can choose to notify users that this content has changed. So if we've updated something, maybe we had a mistake in our due date that we've updated, you can choose whether or not to notify users that this content has been changed. That would give in a notification. And if you do change something while it's active, I still recommend telling your students whether you use this option or not. So that would bring us to the bottom, and we could choose to save and publish our assignment, and that would get our assignment published in our class. So to recap all of that, we talked about a lot of different options. To recap that, we talked about ways that we can create assignments and the options that we have in Canvas. And so I really want to thank everyone for being here today and for watching this recording. And then we will go ahead and stop the recording now and start our discussion. So thank you so much for your time.